What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to You, Me, and Capri for another edition of The Extra Mile, where today we are going to be talking all about Kena, Bridge of Spirits. So this is going to be our review. I wanted to start off by saying a massive thank you over to the team at Ember Labs for providing us a code for review. We got to check it out. I sat down and played it all weekend. I was hooked, and I'm going to be giving you my thoughts all about Kena, Bridge of Spirits. So my name is Matt. I'm co-hosting over with Ryan over on the PlayStation Drive, and let's talk about Kena. Without further ado, this has been one of the most anticipated games of this year for sure, especially one of the most anticipated indies. Ever since we first saw it back at one of the PlayStation showcases, people have been so excited. The game looks beautiful. Kena looks cool. The rot look adorable. And I'm happy to say that for the most part, Kena is pretty awesome. The combat is fun, the story is heartwarming and a joy to play through. The environments are big and open and just beautiful. I can't get over how gorgeous this game is, especially that Ember Labs, not really making any video games before and being a, design and animation studio, now just going on into the world of video games to make something as incredible looking as this. It's incredible. Now, maybe not entirely surprising given the pedigree that Ember Labs has, but I can't overstate how gorgeous this game looks. The lighting looks fantastic. There's a section of the game where you're walking through a forest and it's dark and radiant, and the lightning is crackling and thunder is going through these trees, and it is a sight to behold. It looks beautiful. I had pretty much no performance issues throughout my time with the game, and I spent about 6 to 7 hours playing it to get to the end of the credits. Granted, there's plenty more game left, after the credits, where you can go back in and run around and find the rest of the rot, find the rest of the collectibles, and explore the rest of the world. But in terms of getting to the end of the credits, it took me about 6 or 7 hours. And it looks, like I said, it looks amazing. The entire time, performance was pretty much rock solid. There was a couple frame rate dips, nothing massive and not frequent, but they were there from time to time. And there were some other bugs that, we'll get into a little bit later. But I just wanted to start off by saying graphically, incredible. The game looks fantastic. I was playing it on PS5, and it just consistently a sight to behold. It looks wonderful. And the music is fantastic. It suits the game so well. It's melancholic and slow at times, but also beautiful and loud. Like, it's just beautifully put together, and it's so much fun to listen to. I find myself just kind of standing in a place sometimes just to listen to the music because I was having so much fun just vibing out and chilling and listening to the music. It's fantastic. So music and graphics are both incredible. I can't overstate how great and this game looks and sounds. Now, let's get into the story. I'm not going to be giving any spoilers, just kind of surface level thoughts about my journey with the game. So, I don't want to ruin anything for you guys, just so you know what you're getting yourselves into. So Kena starts off with you as the titular Kena going to this village to try and help guide the spirits that are stuck there. So Kena is a spirit guide. She helps souls that are stuck in our realm cross over and carry on into the afterlife. And your goal in Kena is to you're trying to get to this mountain shrine for reasons unknown. But before you're able to get there, you have to help this village, as you need safe passage to get up there and to figure out how to get up there. There are two main massive areas that you'll spend time in, and each one is focused on a different spirit. And there is a third spirit, but I'm not really going to spoil anything more than that. But the two massive main areas that you go to, one of them is like this dense forest, while the other one is like this deserty-ish, not exactly a desert, but like it's more run down, it's more messed up, especially when you first get there. It's all like fire and brimstone. The areas are huge. There's a lot to take in. If you kind of just run from place to place where the story markers tell you, you're going to miss a lot of the exploration that the game offers. There are treasure chests that you can come across. Some of them you can just open and you'll get cute little hats for your rot, which you'll be able to, buy and purchase on, which I absolutely love, by the way, because I collected almost 64 of them, I think, by the end of my playthrough, and you can set different hats for each one. It's absolutely adorable. There's a little bow, there's a little frog hat that you can find. It's really fun and really endearing, especially because how incredibly cute those characters are. They really do have that like Pixar level of design that just they're incredibly cute. And every time they popped up, and every time you find a new one, there's a short animation of them kind of coming to life and looking at you, and it's adorable. I never got sick and tired of it. Every time I found a new rod, I took a couple seconds to watch that little cutscene just because it was so cute. But back to the level design, the levels are massive, and there's a lot that you can do in them. There are some treasure chests that you can just find. Other treasure chests that you find, you'll have to complete some sort of challenge, be it, defeat a certain amount of enemies in a given amount of time, or, beat a bunch of enemies without taking a hit. All of them are kind of based around these kind of enemy encounters with different conditions. And it's pretty fun to kind of, especially with the try again, as you try and figure out the best way to kind of go about each situation. It's well done. The other piece of side content that I really, really enjoyed that you can find in these massive levels are spirit mail. And what you do with the spirit mail is you take them back to the hub village, and you can find these like locked off houses that you need the spirit mail to help you enter. And once you get inside, there'll be different challenges or different things that you have to do to try, and you'll get different items for it, or you'll get different hats. And I really loved this system just because as you do it, you see these spirits kind of come back to the village. And your first run through the village, it's pretty empty. It's pretty desolate. There's nobody really around. But as you kind of return the spirit mail back to the houses inside the village doesn't come to life because they're just kind of these blue, shadowy, spirits that kind of appear in the village. But it's a really, really nice touch. Outside of that, there are also like shooting galleries, like archery challenges that you'll find along the way, which again will either give you more rot or will give you more hats. So there's a bunch of different stuff that you can do outside of just the main story quests in each level. And like I said, the levels are pretty big. And then there's platforming challenges as well. So there's a lot to find, and not all of it is immediately understandable or accessible. More than once I came across a certain section where I was like, oh, I can do this. And then figuring out that I couldn't do it just yet just because of the limitations of the items or the abilities that I had at the time. So it does have that Metroidvania like, okay, maybe I'll come back to this later and figure it out. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot of winding pathways, and the game is really good at kind of taking you to each area to help you understand what's going on there. But then it's up to you to kind of dig in and find the rest there. It's cool. And like I said, I wish there was a little bit more to the areas. I wish there was a little bit more interactivity, and I wish there was just they are ultimately kind of empty outside of their beautiful design and the enemies that you'll find along the way. I just wish there was a little bit more variety in the ways that you can interact with them, or just make them a little bit smaller and give us a little bit more areas to be able to traverse. But for the areas that we have, I was pretty happy with them, and I enjoyed running around and hunting and exploring and being able to find the different rot and continue on with the story. And like I said, there's plenty that I didn't find, so I'm excited to dive back in and take a look to see what else is there that I missed. The story as a whole is quite interesting. It's very heartfelt, and I actually found myself like tearing up at certain points, especially as you get to the points where you learn more about the kind of massive spirits that that kind of control each area, or that each area is based around. Once you kind of get to them, you're given this long cutscene to give a more in-depth look at who the spirits are, what led them to, get stuck in this mortal realm, and, as you try and help them move on. And it's beautiful. The cutscenes are incredibly put together. Like I said, the game graphically is absolutely gorgeous. The animation is beautiful. So those sections are really quite a sight to behold, and they're really, really beautiful to look at. And then the ultimate culmination of the story, again, really, really well done. There's some spectacular cinematic stuff that happens towards the end of the game that I won't say anything more about, but in terms of the story, it really does reach that kind of almost Pixar or DreamWorks level of authenticity and heartfeltness, if that's a word. It's really, it pulls at your heart in a lot of ways, and I really, really enjoyed it, especially as someone who loves a lot of the Disney movies and a lot of the Pixar stuff. This game really gave me a lot of the same vibes in the best way. So story-wise, it was fantastic. Gameplay-wise is where the game, I feel like, might be a bit of an acquired taste. There's a lot of comparisons through a lot of other reviews talking about how the game feels like an old school kind of mascot platformer, and really that is true, but I don't think that it's a bad thing, to be honest. It's just the way that the level design works and the way that you kind of run around. Combat is fun, and as you kind of upgrade Kena and upgrade more of her abilities, it just gets more and more engaging, but at the same time, it only ever really is just kind of like smack the enemy until they die. The game is also tough. Playing on the Spirit Guide difficulty, which is like, I guess, I don't know if it's normal or hard, but it's the second option. I got my butt kicked over and over and over again, especially against the bosses and some of the mini bosses. I don't think I beat any of them on my first go. Like it took a lot of learning and trying to figure out the different mechanics behind each boss. So, and like I said, the combat, there are certain times where like you think that you rolled properly and you'll still get smacked. Some of the timing can be a little bit off. It isn't as fast and as fluid as something like Tales of Arise, which I think, is the other game that I've been playing where the combat is just so fast, fluid, and just it's a lot of fun. Kena, I feel like the combat is kind of just more there. None of the systems are so tight that it's just like, oh, I'm having a blast playing this every second. Sometimes it was frustrating. Sometimes you do get mobbed by enemies, and it's the combat. The combat is good. I wouldn't say it's great. I wouldn't say it's bad. I think it's good. I think it's serviceable and it works within the world of the game. And I think it gets better as it goes. Like I said, as you develop more abilities and as you get more of your items, everything kind of starts to click more where you're using your arrow to shoot one enemy in the face, tossing a bomb at another, rolling away, hitting some combos, and, using your kind of rot infused abilities, which are almost like super attacks that you'll use your rot to do. It does start to click the more time that you spend with it. But again, like I think ultimately it's just fine. I think the combat is okay. The platforming, on the other hand, again, I think it's fine. For me, for my personal taste, it's a little floatier than I like, especially like your first jump, you get some height and you get some distance, but the second jump, the double jump kind of just feels like like you're just kind of spinning in the spot. Like it doesn't seem to add a ton of distance. There are moments where, like, again, you think that you've made the jump and then you miss it and you fall off and either you die or you kind of have to restart all over again. It works well. It works fine. And again, some of the platforming segments can get a little bit frustrating just because of how the platforming ends up working. But as a whole, it's all right. Like it really does feel like almost like a Jak 2 or a Jak 3-esque level platformer where, like, again, everything is good. It just doesn't completely hold up in today's world where a lot of platforming just gets so tight and so precise and so much fun. And I think I feel like the gameplay systems are kind of just a means for the story and for the animation and for the graphics, which again doesn't mean that the platforming is bad, doesn't mean that the combat is bad. I just think it's fine. It's all right. It's never enough that you're kind of like, oh my God, I want to put down the controller and stop playing. It's never at that level of frustrating, but there are certain sections, especially like I said, with the combat or with the platforming where you think you got this, or you think you've nailed this jump, or you think you've rolled out of the way properly and the systems don't entirely line up. So I think it works. I think it's fine. I think it really depends on how much you enjoy those kind of old school action platformers. If they're not for you, I don't think Kane is going to do anything outside of, like I said, the story and the graphics. I don't think they're like the gameplay systems are going to do anything that makes you want to stop, just stay there and keep playing. But if you do enjoy those games, if you do enjoy kind of like the Jak and Daxter-esque platforming of your, I think the game does a good job. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's bad. I think it does a good job. It's just that as you kind of continue the story and as you get to know the characters and as you get to know, more of what the mystery of the rot is, the game kind of captures your heart and doesn't let go. And these issues that I had, I feel less and less as you kind of continue on with the game, because again, it's not a long game. After about 6 or 7 hours, to roll credits, it doesn't overstay its welcome. And I think everything that it does well. It just doesn't do it incredibly. But what brings it up to that level of incredible, what makes the journey worth it, is the story, is the music, is the graphics, because it's wonderfully put together. And I think, like I said, the systems are there as more of a means to an end rather than it being the kind of reason that you're going to jump in and play. From the beginning, since we saw Kena the first time, again, everybody was focused on how beautiful the game looks and how adorable the Rot are and how cool of a character Kena is, because she is awesome and a lot of the voice acting is fantastic. I just feel like the gameplay itself is good. I don't want you to think that it's bad, and I'm trying not to oversell, I'm not trying to be too negative. I just want you to be aware of kind of how the game sits, because there are a lot of things that it does well. There are some things that it does fine. I think one of my biggest gripes about the game, and one of the kind of things that kind of stood out the most, there are a couple bugs and checkpointing issues that I have. Bugs wise, it's nothing game breaking, but I had more than enough scenarios where the boss would get stuck outside of the level or on a piece of geometry, and they just kind of ended the boss fight because I could just sit there and keep peppering it with arrows until it died. It would never try and make its way back into the actual, boss arena, which again is just kind of funny. Like it didn't really break the game, but it kind of just does end the boss fight. The biggest gripe that I have with the game is the checkpointing. There are some checkpoints that are just really frustrating. And like I said, given how hard the game can be in its boss and its boss scenarios and its combat encounters, some of the checkpoints are a little bit too far for the amount that at least I died playing on the Spirit Guide difficulty, to kind of run back. The cutscene starts again every time. That yes, you can skip, but sometimes you skip and you still have to sit through the boss animation as they're kind of like, starting the fight. And sometimes it just goes right into the fight. Sometimes the checkpoints, there's a bunch of platforming that you have to do. There was one particular section that really, really drove me nuts because of how many enemies you got mobbed with. But, before you get to that point, there's some platforming and some locks that you have to break open. There's 2 of them and then a third in the middle, and you drop down to this combat arena to be able to continue the fight. But every time I died, you have to redo all the platforming and redo those unlocking mechanisms, which again, like I did them probably 6 or 7 or 8 times because you start getting hit with more and more enemies. You're getting hit with harder and harder enemies. The mini bosses become more of a regular enemy than anything else. So the checkpointing, I think, does need some work, and I think it does need some updating because it's just, again, it feels like an old school platformer, an old school action platformer in that respect, where you're kind of like, oh God, okay, I have to do these things over again to get back to the point where I just was. I think the checkpointing is my biggest issue with the game. Again, it was never anything that kind of stayed with me for long. As soon as you kind of get through that section, the game does a good job of kind of just wrapping you in itself and continuing on with the story and continuing on with the game. So it does do a lot of things very well, but the checkpointing can be frustrating, especially given how difficult the game can be. Overall, I think Kena is a really good game, especially given that it's Ember Lab's first proper full game. I think they did a really good job. I think there are certain aspects of it that are fantastic. Like I've mentioned before, the story, the graphics, and the music are all incredible. I think things are good. The combat and the platforming, I think, are good. They're fine. And like I said, there's a couple of frustrating issues, but nothing that takes away enough from the overall experience that I wouldn't recommend this game to you, because if you like those old school action platformers, you're going to find a lot to love here. There is the journey that it takes you on is fantastic. It is a joy to behold. And Kena has so much heart, and so do the Rots. Like it's so well done when it clicks, when everything's running properly. It is beautiful and it is a lot of fun. And like I said, some of the bosses are really tough, but really fun to try and figure out how to beat them. Some of the combat encounters are really enjoyable. And like I said, once it does click, once you do upgrade some and everything starts running the way that it should, the game is a blast. It just takes a bit to get there, and there are certain sections that just are a little bit more frustrating than not. But the game is really, really good. Make sure you go check it out. It is out on PS5 and on PC on the Epic Game Store. Thank you so much again to Ember Labs for sending us our code for review. I had a really good time with it. Please make sure you stay locked here to Yumi and Capri. We have so much cool content coming. Make sure you listen to the PlayStation Drive, the Xbox Drive, the RPG Cave, the Nintendo Drive, and so much more. As for myself, if you want to see more of me, I live over at Burnout Brighter, youtube.com/burnoutbrighter, where we do a whole bunch of reviews and other cool stuff along with our podcast. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Yumi and Capri and Ember Labs once again, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.